When God of War Ragnarok was originally released in 2020, it was the anticipated sequel to the 2018 reboot for the franchise, and was considered to be the technical final to the Scandinavian arc. But due to circumstances depicted within the game, there was much more to the story than what players had first assumed there to be. Throughout Ragnarok, the Scandinavian equivalent of the God of War was Tyr, but through most of the game he was intentionally withdrawn and not exactly helpful to Kratos or Atreus in the situation to stop the Aesir from controlling the other realms. From not explaining details to lack of assistance and even to a lack of a desire to defend the other realms from Odin had everyone to question what sort of god of war Tyr was. Only later on in one of the game's biggest plot twists had Odin masquerading as Tyr, and everything done through the illusion of Tyr was to purposefully hamper the cause to instigate Ragnarok. From information now known, the fact that Odin was intentionally misleading everyone about Tyr was a pivotal aspect of Ragnarok, and done purposefully for the player to get the impression that nothing was what it seemed, and no god or goddess could be or should be truly trusted. It even went further that when as details finally had it through optional side quests, the real and true Tyr was actually being held prisoner by Odin, as through initial theories by Mimir and Atreus that Odin would shapeshift into others and assume their identities, but would often keep the real individual imprisoned so Odin could continue to study their behaviors and acclimate himself better to their personalities. This was later confirmed when Kratos and Freya later freed Tyr, and the pair, along with Mimir, mentioned to one another that there was so much that he did not know, from the situation and conflict within the realms to Ragnarok and to rebuilding everything that Odin had destroyed. Opinions on sentiment about Odin impersonating Tyr throughout the near entirety of Ragnarok was something that the Santa Monica studio knew would occur. This was why Tyr was an important or even crucial factor within Valhalla. Even the circumstances for Valhalla were something that varied from interpretations, depending if the player knew all of these said details about Tyr on Odin from Ragnarok. If the player did not do the optional side quests to find out the full details on lore pertaining to Tyr's imprisonment on impersonation by Odin, then dialogue mentioned that during the initial events of Valhalla, how that Tyr was eventually discovered and freed. This was a vague reference to events occurring whether or not the player knew the full details. Tyr mentioned to Kratos that he felt somewhat guilty due to not being able to help much during the events of Ragnarok, and this was why he invited Kratos, Mimir, and Freya to learn the truth of Valhalla, and for Tyr to help Kratos finally resolve the issues from his former life in Greece. Tyr from God of War 2018, God of War Ragnarok, and God of War Ragnarok Valhalla is a character that you should know about because the character was depicted technically in one game, but only truly appeared in an extra content edition.